Today, we killed us some titans. We found a way to bubble pop titans, and I wanted to share that with you today. Titans have been giving us trouble in the Guardian games, so we beat them up a little bit, and it felt good. Sorry, Titans, but bam. Bubble popped. This is a pretty interesting little combo here. It's pretty difficult to deal with in 1v1 situations if you don't see it coming. It is pretty limited, I will say. But look. Pop. Game over. So here's how you do it. Pop. Air dive. Snap. And then you get the unravel to put on a little bit extra damage there at the end. So you really don't have to do much damage. Normal grapple melee is usually just not enough. And trying to follow it up is pretty difficult. So, often by that point, you've been shotgunned in the face. The nice thing about adding an air dive into the end of your grapple melee is that it puts a whole lot of motion variety into the move. So they have no idea where you are, and then they are unraveled. This makes it super difficult to cope with, especially in one-on-one situations where there's not someone else team-shotting the individual executing the maneuver. Okay, guys, but here is my biggest issue with this move. You are giving up a grenade. I've said it before. You're giving up a grenade. So let's be real, not super practical. Not super practical, but fun. Assuming I don't have a special training on you to pop you out of it before we begin the combo. Once you've got the combo started, it's really difficult for me to deal with. I can't see where you're going. You're moving all over my field of view, and you're flipping me out of my first-person perspective. And I'm unraveled. It's just a nightmare to deal with. If you can catch someone in it like this, catch them off guard, that's it. Doesn't matter what they're wielding. Even if they're wielding a shotgun, and they're pretty good with it, they're going to have a lot of trouble locking down that kill before they're toast. It's really a lot of fun if you can execute it. Biggest issue with it, apart from flubbing it like that, is it isn't going to hold up well in 1v2. And it's not going to hold up well if they see you coming. If a shotgunner knows you're coming around that corner, they can probably pop you before you can begin the combo. So the usage is limited. I would still argue if you're playing like a competitive mode, Rumble, Trials, anything like that, that it's probably not viable just because you're going to need that grenade. You're just going to need that grenade. But it's a lot of fun if you can pull it off. I would say that even in 6v6, because there's so many shooters and so much team shotting going on, especially when you've got Titan balls moving on you in Guardian games, you kind of have to have two players run it. So what I would say, what we've been doing, is you run it with two different players, and then it becomes pretty difficult for their enemy team to deal with. And you're kind of sacrificing one of your teammates most of the time. But at least at first. Well, what I've noticed is by the end of the match, the enemy team starts to get pretty frazzled, and then it starts to get easier to take them apart. But at the beginning of the match, they're rolling in a Titan ball, and they're very confident, they're very bold. And until you kind of break them down, kind of break down their morale, you really need to have two of you in there together. Air dive, by the way. Something really important that I learned about air dive this week. And that is that you cannot have air dive bound to any key that would require you to actuate it with one of your WASD key fingers. not keys, fingers. If you have a finger that you would normally use for directional motion and it has to get off of its key to use your air dive, then that limits the utility of your air dive. And the biggest one is your middle finger. Well, at least for me, my middle finger is what I use to push the W key. And so if you are using that finger to execute your air dive, then you can't execute your air dive properly. Because the best way to execute an air dive is to jump past the enemy or to the side of the enemy. And you're just not going to be able to make that happen if you have to take your directional control finger off to execute the air dive, right? So the fact that it's, I think by default, at least for me, if I remember right, it was bound to X. I don't know if that was default binding or if I had modified it at some point in time. Highly discourage using that as your binding. I like mouse wheel down. For me, it makes it really easy to execute that maneuver. And I don't use mouse wheel to change weapons, so it's a really easy, sacrifice for me to put that on that key. And then I am finding that I'm much faster at executing that air move, and I can place it in a position where the enemy isn't going to see me coming as easily, right? Which is so critical. All right, so we tried it out in combat. It's fun, right? So let's take a look at some of the footage and clips using it. Sometimes here I'm just using an air dive. If I didn't feel like I'd be able to survive the melee around a corner or something, I'm just going to use the air dive. Assuming I believe I can actually make use of that. So that's something to know. A lot of these are just the air dive move. Here's an example where we do the melee into an air dive, and this actually helped because I had a 1v2 situation. I did have help here. I don't know that I would have survived that engagement in a typical 1v2 situation. So that's something to keep in mind, is just that you're really going to want to find a situation where you're pretty confident there's only one other enemy around that corner, right? And then it's a lot of fun. So it's a lot of fun, not a lot of practicality. That's not what this video is about. This video is about having fun. If you want to do this in 6v6, I recommend pairing up with a teammate. It's going to give you guys more opportunities to execute the maneuver, just because it helps, unravel the team. When they ended up there, you're shooting Titans around in those shields. You have to put yourselves in their shoes and realize what's going on in their mind is that shield begins to break. So sometimes what I like to do is just sit there and shoot the shield. If I know they have to charge me and I know that I can kill them once that shield is broken, then I'm just going to shoot the shield. And then for them, the clock starts ticking, right? So just something to think about. All right, air move I'm opting for a lot if I'm worried about getting hit in the face. I've mentioned that before, so again, there's just a lot of examples here. Here I'm trying to dodge that shield, so I'm going to drop down and get an air move so my momentum doesn't carry me through the shield. Here I see a charging Titan. The verticality of the air move is to make sure that I don't meet his shotgun before I'm able to get a shot off. And, maybe by all rights I didn't deserve that kill. This one was fun. I don't think I would have been able to get a 1v2 there without A, a special weapon, and B, if I had tried to grapple melee. Now, actually, I think if I'd executed the full combo there, because I think I had caught them off guard, I think I actually would have killed them more effectively and without needing to use a grenade launcher. If I had just used the full combo. I think that may have actually been a case where the full combo would have worked out better for me. I think we have some other examples of the full combo coming up. The air move tends to have better survivability for me now that I know how to place it. And one big thing that's changed for me with the air move is just right there, that massive amount of directionality that you can get from binding it to a different key, so I can keep that W key held down while I'm doing the air dive. It's so important. Please put that on a button so that you can keep at least your W key down, ideally, and some directionality, right? So you can place that air dive where you want to. Again, here's a situation where I can come around a corner, the super really pops off. Dropping that air dive in with the super. Grapple and air dive, kind of like level 2. I don't know, when I first started using the super, it was a lot just running around. I would come around a corner, but I'd be running on the ground. I wouldn't be using the grapple, and I certainly wouldn't be using the air dive. So, getting better at mixing in all the components is pretty important. The grapple for the huge mobility, and then the air dive so that when you do come or you emerge, you're emerging with a lot of motion, a lot of acceleration, and then by the time you stop moving, you've put everyone into a suspend. It's really important to sort of join all that together to make the super work. All right, let's talk about sliding for just a moment here. I'm doing some experiments, trying to figure out when the best time to slide is, how to slide. I actually expected this to perform a little bit better, but when we got into it, even just standing here, not peak shotting, it was pretty easy to deal with him sliding. And from his perspective, we have some shots of me on the other side of this. It's pretty difficult just to sort of keep your bearings and your orientation and not get dizzy and execute it. And I think, even with a lot of practice, it's just not going to be super reliable to try and slide in, slide out, which is something I believe, or I had believed anyway, that a lot of the pro players, would do, is just slide in, shoot, slide out. I think sliding's great for entry, and then maybe if you're going to continue on, there might be something to it. We'll show some footage, maybe highlighting that a little bit here. But as far as like using it to peak, apart from maybe getting you that opening shot, I don't know that it gives you much of an advantage over just peak shotting. I'm a big believer in you wanting to enter the fight. You want to always make sure that you are choosing when you enter the fight. That is making a huge difference in my survivability, especially at higher levels. And I think that sliding to enter the engagement is perfectly fine. The biggest issue that I have with it is that you need to be able to drop them in one hit, or be looking to maybe get a quick chip and then continue on or something. It's the biggest issue is it just doesn't really work as a peaking technique. I think sliding is 100% viable if you're sliding out to enter the fight or to end it with one shot, or if you're going to slide, get a peak shot and then proceed forward. But if you're trying to use it to peak shot duel, I'm not sure it works well. I'm able to get maybe one shot off on him, but he's pretty easily able to get 2 shots off on me before I can get back to cover, which then, at that point I've lost the duel and I have to run away. And that was consistent. Like, there's no way that I'm going to enter. Oh, and by the way, I'm super dizzy, but there's no way I'm going to be able to enter or do that every time and be winning if every single time I'm losing 2-1. Even if I survive and get away, I'm never going to be able to get a kill, right? It's just not going to be a great solution if you're using your primary. So again, sliding to enter, I think perfectly valid, but you're probably only going to want to do that if you're planning to drop them in one hit. So if you've got a sniper, if you've got a shotgun, if you've got a fusion rifle, I think sliding makes perfect sense. If, however, you are wielding a primary, I don't think it makes sense to slide at all, to be honest, unless you're trying to slide from one point of coverage to the other and you're not really looking to engage other than maybe get a quick chip damage on them just to sort of bait them or kite him around, right? That might work. But as far as if you're going to try and straight up duel him, I would say, generally speaking, and right there's an example of me pulling it off, but it's really hard to do. I would say, generally speaking, you're going to want to save it for special weapons. Now, I have had someone do that, by the way, with a hand cannon, where they zigzag slid in on me and 3-tapped me, and I wasn't able to land a shot. But I think the issue at that point in time was more I was running this. That was back when I was running this 120 with like no stability. And one thing I've noticed with that is that the flinch is real. When you're running a 120 with no stability and no anti-flinch gear, the flinch is real. And so what would happen there is he'd slide in and he'd flinch me, and then he could slide again, and it was harder for me to get back on target or track him because I was constantly being flinched, and then I lost the duel. I believe it was more to do with the flinch than the sliding, to be honest. I think he would have won that duel just fine, just strafing, without sliding, just because of the flinch. The sliding might have added to it. If he's got a lot of anti-flinch, a lot of resilience, a lot of stability, that's probably not going to mess him up that much. And so I would say this. Sliding, if you're continuing direction, if you're not doing like a full 180 slide back the other way, did seem to have some advantage. I was able to slide out, get a hit, slide again, get a second hit pretty consistently. I think here's an example right here. Right? Now, I think I missed that second shot, but I still was able to fire twice before he was able to like do 2 shots of damage worth on me. And I think that's pretty important. So, if you have an open area like that where you're going to be sliding forward and continuing that motion, then it might work, even with a primary. But if you're trying to like slide in, do a 180, less effective. The problem, though, is it's disorienting even for you, and you're trying to shoot fast. Like, there's me trying to shoot fast, and it's really hard. It's as hard for me as for him, right? Again, with a special weapon, makes all the difference in the world. Now, that I missed here, I actually took the time to line up the headshot, right? If you've got a special weapon, then I think sliding 100% makes sense. All right, one other thing I figured out while we were messing around actually was that I could keybind my powered melee, because I separated it from my charged melee, my uncharged melee. I can combine it with my fire button. So, you can do both so that when you fire, it does your melee. I wouldn't advise that. But you can have it so that whenever you do your melee, that is also the secondary binding for your fire, right? Me, when I press V, it's going to use my charged melee, but it's also going to execute my fire button. And simultaneously, I can hit you with a round and my charged melee. So here's some examples of that taking place. This is actually just a grenade shot. We'll just open with that. But this particular individual was difficult. We were getting sort of rolled here by a 6-stack, and we lost this match. This was me sort of just kind of figuring out how to cope with this situation. But there were some pretty cool hits here using this combo right here. The same guy. Check that out. Shot with the grenade and the melee instantaneously drops the guy. He's a charging Titan coming in at you around the corner. Ooh, so scary. Boom. Right now, in defense, I think he was putting up a Titan wall. I think he was just trying to sit out the end of the match. But still, you get the idea, right? Like it just annihilates people, that combo. So kind of a fun key binding combo that you can put together. It seems to work. I'm assuming that means it's sanctioned. I don't know. Hopefully. Anyway, I think that's about all I got for today. Might leave in like a montage here of just, some fun with grenades and snipers. But that's about it for this week. I want to talk a little bit about, last video I did was pretty earth-shattering. There's some really good meat there, like a really good revelation that I had. And it made me a little like intimidated, like how can I follow that up? And at the end of the day, to be honest, I'm not always going to be able to have an earth-shattering idea for my video. So hopefully, if you did subscribe, there is still some good content on here to be had for anyone who tuned into that episode. My primary focus is just going to be taking things that I learn every week, doing analysis on it, figuring out where I went wrong, what I did well, and sharing that with the hopes of all of us, learning and doing better. If I have any earth-shattering learnings, of course, I'm going to share them, but that's not going to be every week. But I'm hoping you can stay subscribed. I'm hoping there's still enough value in these episodes to justify that subscription. If not, then, I don't know, off. But for the rest of you guys, have a chill week. Thanks for tuning in, and hope to catch you guys soon. Peace.